You're listening to episode 35 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness researchers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Executive Director Jessica Morey joins us to speak about inward-bound mindfulness education. Mindfulness is proving to be transformative to people's lives, helping build awareness about themselves and the world around them. They're able to loosen the grip of unskillful behaviors while nurturing those that benefit themselves and others. Imagine for a moment, though, what would it be like to get this solid foundation of practice as a teenager? To learn a different way of engaging with your family, with communities and life. Jessica Morey is the executive director of IB.me. She began practicing meditation at age 14 on teen retreats offered by the Insight Meditation Society. She returned every year for 6 years and then participated for 10 years in an IMS young adult mentoring group. Jessica has attended longer retreats in Asia and the U.S., and is a founding board member and lead teacher for IB.me teen retreats. Before joining IB.me, Jessica worked in clean energy and climate policy and finance. She holds a BA in environmental engineering from Dartmouth and master's degrees in sustainable development and international affairs. Her published works range from the chapter Ordinary Awakening in Blue Jean Buddha to Conflict Resolution of the Baruca Hydro Energy Project, Renewable Energy Production in Costa Rica. Her experience of bringing mindfulness into her work and life was described in a 2012 Shambhala Sun article, Dharma 2.0. More recently, she wrote an article in the February 2014 Mindful magazine, Finding My Way, about her experience learning and benefiting from mindfulness throughout her young adult years. Our guest today is Jessica Morey. Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ted. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm so glad that you're here. After the program that you did at the scientific conference several months ago, earlier this year at Norwood, Massachusetts, I've been very interested in making sure that we get a chance to spotlight the work that you do. So let's get started by telling us a little bit about your background and how you encountered mindfulness.
Yeah. I began practicing mindfulness meditation as a teenager myself. When I was 14, I went on retreat at the Insight Meditation Society. It was one of their first teen retreats. They were just starting them. And my mother sent me. I was actually quite willing to go. And I totally fell in love. I think those first years, what I fell in love with was more the community and the connection, but I returned every year and got more dedicated to the practice itself, the mindfulness, the compassion, the loving kindness. And then from there, I spent time before college in Asia practicing in monasteries in Burma, and I've just continued to have a fairly serious practice since then.
What was it that was different for you about the community itself rather than the practice, at least initially? What was that appeal?
I think it was a very unique experience. at that time in my life to be in a community of adults and also peers who were so safe and sort of viscerally kind. You can tell that these were people that had good intentions, were trying to be kind and develop compassion and generosity. And so there was a sense of being totally accepted, that just as I was, that feeling.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think many of us who have been on retreat have an understanding of what that experience is like to be in that kind of welcoming, open, and safe community.
Yeah, and I think what was actually most impactful was both being with a group of adults who demonstrated that and kind of gave off that energy, but also seeing that, being in that setting, being in that community, myself, and then also my brother came with me. I saw that we acted more kind. I saw that shift in my own mind and experience. So that was what kind of really drew me in.
So tell us about I Be Me. What does that stand for? What do you do?
Mm. So IBME stands for Inward Bound Mindfulness Education. And we use that acronym IBME instead of IBME as expressing how that quality I was sort of talking about, that we lead meditation retreats for teenagers across the country. We developed a secular model of mindfulness retreats, but it's very much that same root experience that I had as a teenager, where teens really get to be who they are and feel at home, feel accepted, feel safe.
So how did I Be Me get started?
So the lineage goes back to the Insight Meditation Society, into those early retreats that were started by teachers named Michelle McDonald and Stephen Smith. So that was about 25 years ago. Now, about 10 years ago, a teacher named Temple Smith brought them to California. He had actually been a staff person when I was a teenager. He's now a teacher at Spirit Rock, and he began leading teen retreats in California. And then in 2007, he was invited by a generous donor to come to Virginia and start teaching teen retreats. And at that time, I was living and working in DC full time. So Temple got in touch. He said, you should come down, help us out with this. And out of those retreats in Virginia in 2007, we developed what's now IBME. And now we teach retreats in 8 states across the country.
So what kinds of teens do you work with? What are their backgrounds? How do they find you?
We work with all kinds of teens. So uh, we really have a commitment to diversity in a real, true way. So we have teens that come from more kind of difficult backgrounds, from lower economic status. We also have kids that come from extremely wealthy families, kids that go to fancy boarding schools, and kids that come from inner city schools. Um, and the primary thing is that each teen that comes needs to have some level of personal interest in doing the mindfulness practice. So they can't be kind of forced to come by their mom or someone who thinks it's good for them. And as an element of that, what I find, the teens that really kind of latch on and keep coming back year after year, there's really already an awakened interest in the questions of who am I and how do I be happy. And they're already really deeply exploring those questions. And those are the kinds of teens that come on the retreat and start to find ways to answer those questions.
Yeah, and I've noticed in some of the videos on your website, and for folks who are listening, I'll embed a couple of those videos from Vimeo and YouTube on this episode page, so you can see those very easily, and please do go to their site as well. That there has been some progress because you have teens who've been coming every year now for several years. And so have you noticed some trajectory changes and impacts in their lives?
Yeah, very, very much so. It's really fun, especially thinking back to our early retreats in Virginia. We now have One of the teens who went on that very first retreat, I just saw him at the Insight Meditation Society. He was working there. So he went and did a 3-month retreat uh, after first having the experience on a teen retreat. Another young woman who came from a pretty difficult background, she came to all of those early retreats, the summer and the New Year's and weekends, was really struggling in those years, and now is doing really well. She's in college. She now manages retreats for us and is just sort of has a happiness and a kind of stability about herself. But I think we can attribute a fair amount to the practice and the community. What I always find kind of the most touching is hearing from parents when their kids get home and they email us and tell us things like, my teen wanted to hang out with me. Like, this is amazing. Or, they just said hello and asked how my day was, or they did the dishes. So
What
those
parent
kinds of
wouldn't like
things.
that? That's great.
Exactly.
So what are some of those other success stories that over the years that stand out for you that you recall that every now and then those are the ones that inspire you and rekindle your own interest in why you do this?
There's one young man who comes to mind who came on one of our New Year's retreats. He was an older teen. We do have an application process where we ask kids about their mental health, how they're doing, and drugs and alcohol and things like this. And so we do screen teens that they have to have some level of stability. But this teen wasn't honest on his application, and he arrived on retreat. And he actually had been using quite a lot of drugs before coming, and we always have staff who have worked with addiction, and so one of our staff really worked quite closely with him throughout the retreat, and he stayed sober throughout the whole retreat. And then it just expressed so much joy and enthusiasm and appreciation and clarity, and by the end of the retreat, but also anxiety about going home and going back into his life. But he stayed sober after retreat, and then came to the summer backpacking retreat and was continuing the positive changes that he had first experienced being sober on the teen retreat. So that's one young man who I really think about and feel a lot of gratitude about his experience. And there's others. There's a young woman who struggled a lot with depression and cutting, and we spent a lot of time talking about it and talking about ways that she could use mindfulness to manage those emotions and manage some of the self-destructive behaviors. And it's been a long road, so she's been on 5 retreats with us. It's now 4 years later, and I see so much possibility and success with her, and she's really able to articulate some of her positive qualities. She's able to make some wiser decisions. I think there's a lot more resource and possibility for her that would not be there if she hadn't done the retreats or learned this practice when she did.
So what are some of the differences teaching teens about mindfulness rather than an adult population?
The primary thing with teenagers is that you have to be totally authentic. You have to speak from the truth of your experience when you're teaching. You can't just kind of offer some intellectual understanding or experience. So they, the BS meter is very high. Teenagers, they catch that and they want realness. They want authenticity, and also just kind of a vulnerability, a willingness to point out where we've struggled and where we're still struggling. Like that builds trust and engagement. And I also find that it's really particularly important to share a lot of personal stories, to talk about who I am, how did I get here, how has this practice benefited me in my daily life, why does it matter to me? Those are kind of the things I want to know.
Yeah, it's interesting that there is an amazing consistency when I ask that question of teachers who work with youth, and particularly at-risk youth, that authenticity, you say it, Sam Himmelstein, a number of others who are in that field all share that is by far just so critical to establishing that relationship with the kids so that you can help them open up in mindfulness practice.
Yeah, and that is really the primary thing that we on each of our retreats we have three teachers, and then we have 10 to 15 other adults who are volunteer staff, and they all have a range of different backgrounds and experiences with youth, with mindfulness, arts and other skill sets. And we actually have the great fortune of having way more adults who want to volunteer with us than we have space for. But the key thing that we're looking for in our teachers and our staff is always that authenticity, that vulnerability, that realness, and not having an agenda. That's a key thing, where the mindfulness comes in so valuable for our own mindfulness of stepping back and looking at what's my motivation here, what's my intention. Am I trying to get a particular result? Am I trying to get this teen to get it? Instead of just like listening, being a presence, mirroring and mentoring and modeling a way of being in the world, letting them realize like their own inner wisdom.
So, what are some of the biggest eye openers for the participants? And that includes the teachers and maybe some of the adult volunteers too. What are some of the things they maybe weren't expecting?
I'd say for the adult volunteers and teachers, because we often have the benefit and the honor of having some pretty senior teachers who will come and teach a teen retreat. And I think what's eye opening for them is one, how fun it is. It's really fun. Just being able to get into that. Like, I talk about it like teenagers have less crust on their hearts. And so it kind of washes away and it softens, I feel like, more quickly than adults, perhaps. Like they're less solidified into their personas and their understanding of the world and their protections. So there's a kind of lightness and a joy and a freedom that arises quite quickly. So by the last night of teen retreat, we have these huge dance parties that are so fun. And we have so many teens who say, "Oh, that was the first time I ever danced in public. Never do it." So I just think that, like, and then I think for the adults that we get to tap into that joyful, playful freedom of the youthful heart. And then, so that's one side of it. The flip side of that is for a lot of adults and teens, almost everyone, when you come on retreat for the first time with the teens, we also get to look at all of our teen stuff. All that stuff of like, I don't fit in, nobody likes me, the awkwardness. And so that we get to work with that. So I think that can be a surprise for the adults.
Yeah, for many of us, that continues well into adulthood.
Right. And we figured out certain strategies to manage and negotiate it, but it's just being in the field with the teens, it's so raw and kind of in your face. where we haven't actually healed those habits. Um, and I think for the teens, the biggest surprise, I think that's really the same thing, that the surprise is it's so much fun, that they have so much fun and make such incredible friendships. The preconception of a meditation retreat for, your summer holiday, that could sound quite boring. But I think they're surprised by how joyful it can be, by the level of connection they can make with other young people in such a short amount of time, when everyone is getting so real and so direct and open.
Yeah, they came out very clearly in some of the interviews that are part of the videos that it was such a joyous thing, that they had a blast, and really new possibilities had opened up for them that were completely unexpected. And that's going to be one of the great joys of doing that work.
Yeah, it's such a delight and a joy. I mean, it's not even in the realm of magnitude, great, great joy. to see a teen realize the possibilities, realize that they don't have to believe all of their thoughts, that they can sit through certain emotions, that they can manage reactions and cause less suffering in their lives.
So you have a couple of different kinds of retreats that are listed on the website. Tell us about some of those.
Yeah, so our primary retreat is the residential week-long retreat, which this year, in 2015, we're planning, I think, 11 of those retreats across the country. And those are 5 or 6 nights. We rent centers, camps or retreat centers, and have our kind of flow of silence and talking and small groups and play. And then we also lead wilderness backpacking retreats. So where we go in smaller groups of 8 to 10 teens and a wilderness guide, a meditation teacher, out into the backcountry. And we've been doing these in the immigrant wilderness north of Yosemite. And so we spend 6 nights backpacking. There's a solo component for the teens. And just do a similar, we do the meditation, we do the practice, the walking meditation, the sitting, the loving kindness, but in the wilderness. We also offer some retreats for adults by popular demand. Because our model is not a totally silent mindfulness retreat, and it's secular. So it can be an easier way for adults also to get introduced to the practice. And there's so much interactive relational mindfulness that can be a really helpful way for people to start. So we lead a backpacking adult retreat also in California in Big Sur. And we've done some parent weekend retreats in the past. And then the final thing we do is we offer retreats to schools, to high schools and colleges that can be weekends or like Jan term programs.
Excellent. Well, for folks who are interested in finding out more, go to the website, which we'll be linking on the episode page for this episode, ibme.info. Our guest today, Executive Director Jessica Morey. Jessica, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Ted. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.